Hello. Okay, I recently finished Wait For Me by Caroline Leech. It was one of the new books at my library, which you know that I love to go through. Loved it. Holy cow, so good. So, it's a historical fiction novel about a couple during World War II. It takes place in, Scotland, and her name is Lorna. The main character's name is Lorna, and she is almost 18, and she lives on her family's farm. Her mother has been dead. Her brothers are serving in the war, and so she's on the farm with her dad. And a prisoner of war is sent to help on their farm, and his name is Paul. Had to double check, all of a sudden I was forgetting. His name is Paul. He's been burned on one side of his face. Later she learns it's from shrapnel from an attack. He was on the beaches during D-Day. And it's their story of Lorna and Paul, and they get to know each other, they fall for each other. There's the whole issue of our countries are enemies, he's a prisoner of war, blah, 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 plus her coming of age, and other things like side stories, obviously. But what I really, really loved about it was the themes of acceptance and not judging and not categorizing people either. Just because he was German doesn't make him a Hitler. Of course it makes sense. You people understand. And so I just loved that. Like, her whole town, when the town finds out that they've kind of got this thing going, the whole town is like against them and judging her and criticizing and being really mean about it. And then even when the war is over, that's still there. And it was just fascinating because at first she doesn't like that there's a German on their farm when her brothers are out there fighting the Germans and he's the enemy. But then she gets to know him, and he's got a family. He has a mom and a sister, and he's talented, and he has this whole backstory that makes him a regular person. And I loved that. So there's this difference in their cultures and their upbringing and what they think they believe, and then it doesn't matter anymore. It was beautiful, beautifully written. Caroline Leech did a beautiful job with the writing, and it was just so good, so good. And she, at the back, talks about what the historical things truly were, and it's really cute because she said that after writing this book, she received some letters of elderly people at this point who had met, like these characters in her novel do. This one specific letter that they quote in the book at the end, it says, "My father was a prisoner of war in Gosford and worked on a local farm. He met and married my mum in 1948 while still officially a prisoner of war, and they celebrated their diamond wedding in 2008. She says, "Your story could have been about them, and I just wanted you to let you know that they had a very happy life together." I love that, this crossing of cultures and boundaries, and again, the not judging, and maybe even it's a story of second chances. Giving him an opportunity to be Paul rather than a German. It was beautiful. So, so beautiful. And since it's mostly just their story, obviously historical things are pulled in, like she reads the newspaper, she listens to BBC on the radio. So you get pieces of the war, but something that I think is always fascinating, we know all these huge historical facts, when wars start and end, and bombings, and the numbers of people who were slaughtered in the Holocaust. We know all these basic facts, but each of those facts, behind those facts, there are people, and the people all have different stories. And so I loved how this was a personal story. You saw how the war, and again, it's a fiction, these characters are fiction, but you saw how the war affected these two, their personal lives, how war is devastating to countries on a whole. Think of all the horrible things that, like, cities in Germany just destroyed, and on and on and on. Any war, cities and communities just demolished, gone. But again, there's people at the root of all that, and that could bring up a whole nother conversation. But so I loved how it was about the people. We saw these two people where the war was affecting them, hurting them and their families, hurting their communities, but then we saw it on a personal level as well. Paul loses half his face because of shrapnel. He got hurt really bad in his side, like all this stuff. And Lorna's lost her brothers. Well, not lost them, but they're not there anymore. They're not part of her life the way they should have been. War, like I said, it hurts countries and it hurts so many people, and it really becomes so personal. She talks about at the beginning how when it started, it was supposed to be over by Christmas, right? That's something we've heard. That's what they said. And it just goes on for years and years, and everyone is struggling. Her family is struggling. The community is struggling because men and sons and uncles and cousins are gone, not there to do their day-to-day jobs that the families need them for, because they're out sitting in trenches and fighting for this overall country and this overall idea that does affect everybody. But again, at the root, it's these people with individual personal lives. And so that became a long kind of tangent. But so that's something that I loved about this. It had the facts of the war, and it is historically, in some ways, historically accurate. But again, it shared a story of how other people's decisions, especially people in positions of power, Hitler, Churchill, affect day-to-day lives and people. Again, beautifully written, really good story. I really liked it. The side characters were so real. Their little housekeeper, since her mother is gone, loved her. She was definitely a little side character, but I adored her. She was so cute and so fun. You see tension between Lorna and her best friend Iris. Obviously, she's dealing with her father and no mother in the home anymore. That's its own thing. And the community in general, like I said, they're so judgy. And her teacher was great. Anyway, I don't want to give things away because now you already know that it's a love story and, whatever. But so, Wait for Me by Caroline Leech. Let's see. It's published by Harper Teen, and I want to get the year for you. 2017. Perfect. I knew it was new, but I wasn't sure how new. This year, guys. This year. Really, truly, read this book. It was beautiful. And I think that it's totally relevant in today. We're dealing with racism and stereotypes and gender equality, religious views and religious clashes, so much. And their story is a reflection of all of that. You can put anybody in there, anytime where your lifestyles and your backgrounds are different. And just, people are people. People are not their country. They're not their religion. You know what I mean? There's so much more to them than just that. My religion plays a huge part in my life. Huge. So yes, that's a big chunk of who I am, but that's not all of me. That's not all of me at all. I read a book to my preschoolers today called I Like Myself. I can't remember the author's name right now. I'm sorry. But it was this girl saying at the beginning, she says, I like my eyes, I like my ears, I like my nose, I like my fingers and my toes. But then she goes on to say, I like me fast, I like me slow, I don't remember all of them, but she talks about being brave and all the things she can do. And the pictures show her dancing and at the zoo and on roller skates, and she's doing all these different activities and riding this bizarre contraption bicycle thing that she has created, right? It was very Dr. Seuss in that one image. But she says at one point, she goes, and I don't care, it was along these lines, I don't care if people called me weird or a cuckoo bird. And then she says, so what? I like me. And I loved that book, and my preschoolers are not quite at the age where they grasp the concept of self-esteem and being proud of who you are, because then I asked them things that they loved about themselves, and very few of them were completely grasping the concept. But I read that to them because I want it to start in at such an early age. I wear glasses. I've been wearing glasses since I was in kindergarten, I believe. That's not who I am, though. When people are like, oh, do you know Megan? And someone else is like, is she the short girl with the glasses and the short hair? Then you're like, yeah, that's her. That's how they see me, but that's not who I am. And it addresses that in that book. And it is the same thing in Wait For Me. German is not who Paul is. There's so much more to people. And as we put aside the differences, or embrace the differences, actually. It's about embracing the differences as we get to know people and embrace the differences and find common ground and truly listen to people's stories. I think there would be a lot less hate in this world. And that is the theme of Wait For Me. This is gonna sound really hippie, but more love, less hate. Seriously. So, Wait For Me, Caroline Leech, Harper Teen. Highly, highly recommend. Keep reading.